Thank you, Dr. Juwita. I will not make my speech too long, but again, I want to thank you, everyone here, for participating in this Liberalism conference and spending your precious Saturday with us. And again, I want to thank all the speakers in the first session, in the second session, for providing us with thought-provoking insights. Liberalism conference, this is the 8th in IDS history, is not only a way for us to remind ourselves of our liberal root as Malaysians, but also to reinterpret, to reinvent these values, these principles, to answer the challenges that we face as a nation, especially in the current polarizing domestic and global situations. We want these values to speak to us, and we reinvent. And in fact, today, we are given opportunities to deliberate whether we need to reintroduce or recognize another important values such as equality or social justice in our founding principles. So I think, of course, these sessions, we don't have the time to do a dialogue, but I think a lot of questions. We have 49 questions for the first session, 32 questions for the second one. We will compile these questions, and I think please don't stop the conversation in this room. And I think to build a consensus for Malaysia's future, we need more dialogue like this. Of course, unfortunately, we couldn't invite everyone to speak as usual, but I hope lunch later, and I think our setting will provide you time to discuss among each other. In the first session, I will just wrap up just a little bit to remind everyone of the conversation since this morning. In the first session, I think the discussion reminds us that our expectation of the role of state in guaranteeing liberty, freedom, and justice, and also to cater to all different groups, shaped by our history. But also it's changed over time, depending on the composition of the group in the society, and of course also shaped by the political context, globally and domestically. And for that reason, dialogue is very important. And I think the speakers, all of them, remind us of the importance of civil society, not only as religious organization or social organization, but also individual citizens like us, who gather in coffee shop, in mama, in places, to always have discussion and dialogue over what it means, the state for us, and what kind of role that we want the state to play. In the second session, I think all of us are reflect on how, as a small nation like Malaysia, to weather the current global tension. We have a good principle of non-alignment, but it's time again for us to reinterpret and be a little bit more. I think I would like to use the term from the speaker, a responsible non-alignment, a more active role in shaping the global discourse and tension. And of course, the speakers also talk about pursuing different regional cooperation, not only ASEAN, but we have, the Islamic Cooperation Organization. We also been very active in counterterrorism, for example. We can use this regional cooperation to not only for our own interests, but also shape the global politics. But I think one very interesting to me is to also shape our domestic policies. I think I just came from Asia Liberty Forum, in which discussion on nickel in Indonesia has been quite, been going on for quite some time. And they too resorting into a more domestic, inward-looking policies when it comes to extractive policy. In Malaysia, of course, we know extractive or mining are under state government. And in order for us to attract investment that's beneficial for both the state at federal level, we need to have a discussion on how to move forward. And it's the time for us to do that now. I want to end by saying that the both sessions, I think, remind us for the state, when we said impartial, it's not neutral. I like your position on it's not neutral. we have to have a position, and that position needs to be clear. For domestic policies, I think the first session reminds us that the state needs to be a facilitating force, in addition to being a protector, but not only for one group of race, but for all groups in a nation. So that's the role that the state should play. In the global context, we have to be, I want to stay again, I really like this term. We have to be a responsible non-alignment nation. The second one that I think cut across these two sessions is the importance of dialogue, trust, and respect. The fact that the current global tension most of the time is actually shaped by the distrust. And it's the time for us to facilitate those dialogue. I hope Liberalism Conference provide all of us with an opportunity to speak to each other, to have a difficult conversation, even difficult and constructive conversation on how the nation and also the world should move forward. Thank you again for spending your Saturday with us, and looking forward to see all of you in the next Liberalism Conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Muniarti, for the closing address. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, today's event is drawing to a close. On behalf of Ideas Malaysia, we would like to express our sincere and appreciation and heartfelt gratitude to all the contributors and participants in making today's event a success. We would also like to express our great appreciation to FNF for supporting this event. A couple of announcements before we end. If you could just remain seated so we can take a group photograph of all the attendees and the guests. And also, the lunch will be served at Serena Brasserie at lobby level. Please hand in your tags to the staff to gain entry. We thank you again greatly for your participation, and we look forward to meeting you at the 9th Liberalism Conference next year. Thank you, everyone. Please remain seated for the photograph.